Well, a very good afternoon and welcome to this week's Lite Bite Lunch Budget Special. We're going to cover as much as we can about the budget. We've had quite a few questions in that I'm going to try and somewhat elaborate on the answers on. So pull up a chair, grab a coffee and join us for a Lite Bite. Good afternoon. Very good afternoon to you. It is Thursday afternoon. It is 1 p.m. if you're watching live. If you're watching it on playback, please don't take our word for what time it is. This is the Lite Bite Lunch. I'm Rory Devlin, and we're going to do an overview of the budget. We have had a whole heap of questions sent in to us asking us different things in relation to it, and we will get through as many of them as we possibly can. One of the most popular questions that has come in was asking about auto-enrolment and the new pension system. Auto-enrolment is going to launch on the 1st of January. Employers and employees will each make a contribution from their salary, and then the employer will match that, and the state will match it by 1/3. The plan is the contributions will gradually increase over time, and it's designed to supplement existing pension schemes and improve retirement savings. I'm not going to get into a whole lot of detail about that. In 4 weeks' time, we're actually going to be joined by the team from Rockwell Financial, who are going to go into much more detail about it, the types of thing you can do, the way to maximize it, etc. So all the questions in relation to that, I'm going to ask people to come back to us at the start of November. We will have all of that, and we'll go through everything. So before I get into the whole budget thing, I just need to make mention about this. It is hard to believe we are only a week away from the Micro Business Awards 2026. Or 2025 rather. It has seemed like forever that we've been talking about it, but the team are so hard at work planning not just 2026 but also 2027 at the moment, because there's so many plans coming up. The finals are being held in the Collection Hotel in Portlaoise. The trophies are being made as we speak. Maggie Geraghty from Mayo Calligraphy is working on the certificates at the moment, so there is genuinely so much happening. I'm delighted to say, because this is our 10th year, we will also have a nice little gift bag for attendees. Incredible Socks have given us some lovely socks to give out to everybody. We have key rings, we have pins, we've a nice little gift bag there for everyone when you arrive. When you check in, Cheryl will have those for you. We still have 5 tickets available. If you know anyone that would like to come along for a really good night out, they get their pre-dinner drinks and networking. They get the awards ceremony. They get a gorgeous 5-course dinner. They get a raffle. All come included for the price of €100 per ticket. It really is going to be an exceptionally good night. If you do know anyone that would like tickets, they can book them by emailing microbusinessawards@gmail.com with the subject tickets. They'd let us know how many tickets they would like. We can email them back then with their invoice, which is a payment link on it. They click the payment link, they input their own details, and it'll automatically go through from there. So as I said, if you haven't yet booked tickets or you want to book extra tickets, there are still 5 available. But that will have to close tomorrow because I do need to finalise the numbers with the hotel tomorrow. So if you get a chance, as I said, it's the Collection Hotel in Portlaoise on Saturday the 18th of October. So do snap up the last of the tickets now. So a very quick breakdown of what the budget has given us. For those on minimum wage, the minimum wage will increase to €14.15, which is an increase of 65 cents. Child benefit will go up by €10. For those that qualify for the fuel allowance, they'll get an extra €5. Pensions will get an extra €10. The VAT on electricity and gas has been kept at the 9% rate. However, we will see some wipeout of that by the carbon tax. As an example, 2.5 cents per litre on both petrol and diesel, which has already come into effect since yesterday. We also see a number of the electric companies and whatnot announcing price hikes also from yesterday. So unfortunately, it's marginal that any difference it's going to make, but any saving with a budget like we saw this year, any saving is a good one. The packet of cigarettes is 50 cents on them. For the businesses that have the opportunity to benefit from research and development tax credits, they have been increased. Unfortunately, the income tax bands, we've had no change. One of the things that was introduced for Budget 2026 is confirmed changes to PRSI. Now, I need to stress to people, these changes actually came in from the 1st of October this year. So employee PRSI has gone from 4.1 to 4.2% on any earnings over €352 per week. And employer PRSI has gone from 11.15% to 11.25%. That's again also effective from the 1st of October. And aligned with self-employment rate, aligned with the employee rate rather, the self-employed PRSI is now set at 4.2%. Now, while these increases don't sound a huge amount, when the budget contribution comes in, the whole lot, and for those whose employees are on minimum wage, it is going to make quite an impact. And it's something I would say, sit down, make your plan now to look at the impact it's going to have on your business. Now, rather than just sit here and throw figures at people and leave people more confused than they were when they began, I thought what I would do is I will explain it in the terms of different people in different occupations. So people we're going to talk about, we have Jimmy, who works in a chipper in Finglas. He's on minimum wage. We've Lisa, who's a primary school teacher in Tala in Dublin. She's on 35,000. We've Tom, who's a mid-level manager in Galway, on 55,000. Aoife, who owns a tech consult company again in Dublin, on 100,000. We have Anne, who is a civil servant, and again mid-level, so not too bad. And we have Mary, who works in HR in Cork. So there are characters, they're the people we're going to be talking about. Anne's view as a civil servant is probably one of the more interesting, so I think we'll just start with her. Anne has a habit of reading budgets like novels. She searches for the subtext, the contradictions, and the quiet betrayals buried in the footnotes. Budget 2026 was no exception. She wasn't involved in its creation, but as a mid-level civil servant in the Department of Community Affairs, she had early access to its contents. She had read it twice. So her views, quite a lot to be heard there. So we'll start with Jimmy. I asked Jimmy to sum it up in one sentence. And he said, well, for him, it's a snorkel in a hurricane. So as Jimmy wiped his hands in his apron, the smell of vinegar and grease clinging to his fingers like bad news, the chipper was quiet, midweek lull, and the telly behind the counter was blaring. Something about budget 2026. 14.15 an hour, the news lad said. Jimmy squinted. 14.15, he muttered. That's 65 cents more. Jesus, I'm rich. He laughed, but it was the kind of laugh that didn't reach his eyes. He pulled out his phone and did the maths. 65 cents times 40 hours. 26 quid a week. 104 a month. That's a few more bags of chips, he said, to no one in particular. But then he thought about rent. His landlord had already hinted a bump. His ESB bills were climbing like a mountain goat's. The price of a bus ticket was going to go up again, and the chipper's fryer needed fixing. The boss had said there might have to be a cut in hours. Jimmy lit a cigarette out back and stared at the bins. Just like giving a man a snorkel in a hurricane, he said. You're still drowning, only slower. He'd heard something about child benefit going up. Didn't apply to him. Pension bump? Not yet. Fuel allowance? Only if you were freezing and in the right bracket for it. He was 32 and cold, but not cold enough. The VAT cut on electricity and gas was staying. That was something. Maybe I won't have to wear 2 jumpers in bed. He texted his mate Lisa. She was a teacher. Did you see the budget? She replied, it's grand, but it's not a game changer. Jimmy snorted. It's not even a game. So we talked to Lisa then. Lisa stood in front of her class trying to explain fractions to a bunch of 8-year-olds who thought maths was a form of torture. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Budget 2026 alerts. She ignored it. Fractions first. At lunch, she sat in the staff room with a cup of tea and a squashed ham sandwich. The TV was on. Budget coverage. She sighed and turned up the volume. No change to income tax bands, the newsreader said. Lisa rolled her eyes. Of course not. She earned 35,000. Not poor enough for supports, not rich enough for perks. The middle of the middle. The forgotten middle. Her mum, though, she'd got the €10 pension bump. That'll cover her bingo and a scone, Lisa muttered. Child benefit was up €10. Her sister was delighted. That's a new pair of runners from Pennies for the young fella, she'd said. Lisa got nothing. No tax reliefs, no credits, no housing support. She'd been saving for a deposit for 5 years. The prices kept running ahead of her like a dog off the lead. She texted Jimmy. Have you seen the budget? He replied, it's not even a game. She laughed. It's grand, she typed. It's just not a game changer. The holding of the VAT cut on electricity and gas is staying. That's something. Her flat in Tala was freezing in winter. Maybe she'd only need 1 hot water bottle this year. She looked around the staff room. Everyone was quiet. Teachers, SNAs, cleaners. All sitting in the same boat, floating, not sailing. Tom, on the other hand, who's a mid-level manager in the west of Ireland, he was sat in traffic on the Headford Road in Galway listening to the radio. Yet again, no changes to income tax bands, but the reduced VAT on electricity and gas will remain. Tom snorted, cheers for that. The house won't be Baltic this winter. He earns 55,000, enough to be taxed properly, not enough to feel rich. His mortgage was a beast, his 2 kids were growing like weeds, and the car needed new tyres. Again. At work, he grabbed a coffee and checked the budget highlights online. No tax relief, no credits, no mortgage interest support. It's like they forgot we exist, he said to his colleague Siobhan. She nodded. We're the invisible middle. Not poor enough to help, not rich enough to ignore. The €10 bump in child benefit was something. His wife had already texted. That's a few extra yogurts and a box of cereal. Fuel allowance? Not for them. Pension bump? Not yet. R&D tax credits? Only useful if you own the company. Tom sighed. We're floating, he said. Not drowning, not sailing, just floating. He texted Lisa, "What do you think?" She replied, "It's grand, but it's not a game changer." Tom typed back, "It's a shrug in spreadsheet form." So then we move on to Aoife's story. Aoife has a tech consulting company. She's on a good salary of 100,000 a year in her own company. So Aoife sipped her out latte in a sleek cafe just off Bagot Street. Her MacBook open, her inbox humming. Budget 2026 was trending. She glanced through the headlines. No change to income tax bands, R&D tax credits increased. She smiled. It's not personal, but it's good for business. As I said, Aoife earned 100,000. She paid taxes, sure, but she also knew every legal way to keep a few grand in her pocket. Her accountant was a wizard. The R&D credit meant her consultancy firm could claim more back for the AI project they were piloting. There was a few more developers on payroll, she said. No personal tax relief, though. No bump in child benefit. She didn't have kids. No pension increase for her because she's not retired. No fuel allowance. She drove an EV, but the grant for electric vehicles was extended. That'll help the lads in sales, she said. So she texted her mate Tom in Galway. He replied, "It's a shrug in spreadsheet form." Aoife replied, "It's a wink to the suits." She glanced around the cafe. Everyone was on laptops, phones, calls. The budget was background noise. But for her, it was a signal, a green light, a nudge to invest, expand higher. She closed her laptop and stood up. "Time to make it work," she said. So I did mention at the start that Mary's story was one definitely worth hearing. As Mary looked through it all, she felt the headlines were predictable, sensible, targeted, protecting growth. But Mary saw what lay beneath. 9.4 billion in total measures, 8.1 billion for public spending, and 1.3 billion in taxation tweaks. It was a budget that spoke of restraint, not ambition. She noted the absence of personal income tax changes. Austerity dressed in moderation was the phrase she chose to mutter to herself. The PRSI increase was a quiet pinch on workers, especially those in her department who hadn't seen meaningful pay progress in years. The €1,000 renters tax credit extension was welcome, but Mary knew many of her colleagues wouldn't qualify. They're homeowners now, barely, thanks to years of scrimping and saving. What irked her most was the phasing out of one-off cost of living supports. The energy credit, the double child benefit payments, gone. She sat there thinking, and the only thing she could think to herself was, we've replaced lifeboats with laminated safety instructions. The 2.7 billion social protection package was impressive on paper, but Mary had seen how these figures translated, or failed to, into actual services. The €60 increase in working family payment thresholds and a €5 bump in fuel allowance were steps, yes, but they felt like breadcrumbs scattered across a widening gap. She was particularly sceptical of the €5 billion housing investment. She'd been promised homes every year since I joined, she thought, but what we get are press releases and pilot schemes that never scale. The civil service was often tasked with implementing these promises, and she knew how many of them died in committee. Still, she wasn't cynical, not entirely. She saw potential in the €1.1 billion allocation for climate and energy, especially if it meant real investment in retrofitting and fuel poverty schemes. However, if one thing her time in the civil service had taught her, she worried that without clear directives and accountability, it would become another pot of money that trickled into consultancy fees and half-finished frameworks. She folded the budget summary and placed it back in her drawer. She wasn't angry, just tired. tired of watching policy drift from intention to inertia. She would do her part as always. She'd brief her team, adjust the departmental priorities, and prepare for the next round of transformative initiatives. But in her heart, she hoped someone upstairs would remember. Budgets are not just numbers. They're promises. And promises, once broken, are very hard to repair. If we take a look at this as the urban versus the rural, Paddy stood outside his van in Leitrim, boots muddy, fingers stiff. The frost had come early. Paddy, I should mention, is a plumber based in Leitrim, self-employed, and as he describes it himself, some weeks he might make €300, others he might make 800. Some weeks there might be very little, or if anything, there. So he flicked on the radio and to the Budget 26 chatter. He listened, half hoping for something rural, something real. Fuel allowance up €5, the presenter said. Rural social scheme to get a modest boost. Paddy snorted. A boost might buy me half a bale of briquettes. He texted Aoife in Dublin. What's the buzz and the big smoke? She replied, childcare, housing, transport. All urban, all shiny. Paddy replied, we got a fiver and a pat on the head. In Dublin, Lisa saw new flats going up near the Lewis. Not for me, mind, he said, but someone will get lucky. The transport budget was ballooning. New bus routes, cycle lanes, EV charging stations. In Leitrim, Paddy's broadband still dropped during Zoom calls. The road to town was more pothole than tarmac. The local GP was retiring and no one was replacing him. He had met Mary in Cork at a conference. She worked in HR, lived in the suburbs. We've got options, she said. You've got sheep. Paddy replied, yes, and unfortunately, sheep don't vote. The rural social scheme was getting a bump. Thus, too, community employment schemes were mentioned barely. No new rural transport plans, no broadband overhaul, no rural housing strategy. It's a nod, Paddy said, not a handshake. He texted Jimmy. What did you make of it? Jimmy replied with his favourite phrase, it's a snorkel in a hurricane. Paddy typed, out here, it's a paper umbrella. So if we look at then the self-employed versus employees, Paddy was under a sink in Ballinamore when the budget came through. Later in the van, he checked the headlines. As we've said, no tax cuts, no pension, no sick pay safety net. He sighed, same old story. Paddy earned what he earned, no paid holidays, no sick days, no HR department, just him, his van, and a toolbox that owed him nothing. The VAT drop for hairdressers and food business was nice. Might shave a few quid off the lunch bill, he said. Didn't touch plumbing, no new supports, no grants, no insurance relief. He texted his friend Mary in Cork and asked what she thought. She replied, fuel allowance extended, back to school payment bumped, not bad. Mary worked in HR for a multinational. She had a good salary, a pension, paid leave, and a desk with a view. The budget gave her a few perks, nothing dramatic, but enough to notice. Paddy typed, you got a safety net. I've got duct tape. Mary replied, but you've got freedom. Paddy laughed. Yeah, freedom to chase invoices. The sick pay gap was still wide. The pension system still favoured PAYE workers. The tax credit still leaned towards employees. Self-employed folks like Paddy were left to fend for themselves. He decided to meet Jimmy for a pint. He said, you're on minimum wage. Paddy said, I'm self-employed. We're both skinned. Now, just a question coming in. Right. Thanks a lot, Monique. We'll keep going with it there. We are nearly through it, I promise you. So we're going to look at the spreadsheet behind the pint. Jimmy sat at the bar with a pint of plain. Lisa joined him, followed by Tom, Aoife, Paddy and Mary. The gang was all here. Budget 2026 was the topic. Jimmy pulled out a crumpled printout. Right, he said. Let's have a look and see what the lads in Leinster House gave us. Minimum wage up 65 cents. Pension gone up. Child benefit up. Fuel allowance up. Back to school allowance increased, depending on the age of the child. Now let's look at the tax and credits. No change to income tax. Slight adjustments to USC so that those on minimum wage don't hit the higher rate. That's something good for me, at least, he says. The PRSI going up. R&D tax credits increased for businesses investing, but again, that's going to the companies, no use to the likes of you and me. At least I've held on to the reduction on the VAT. Good to see they're spending money on social housing, once it doesn't get swallowed up in quangos. At least the renter's credit is being held. It's not much, but we've been promised again, but they didn't give us it. They've expanded childcare for lower income families. Great to see the school meals programme extended to more schools. Extended grants for EV, public transport, increased investment for urban. Forget about the rural. Great to see that they're increasing spending on healthcare with a particular focus on waiting lists. Mental health service, modest boost in funding. So as they all sat in the pub, they were sitting in the snug at the back of the bar. Jimmy had claimed the corner booth. Lisa bought crisps. Tom arrived with a round, and Aoife had her laptop. Closed for once. Paddy smelled of turf and WD-40. Mary wore her office badge like a medal. They'd all seen the budget. They'd all felt it differently. Jimmy raised his pint. To 14.15 an hour, he said. May it stretch further than it looks. Lisa toasted back. To child benefit. 10 quid closer to a new pair of runners. Tom nodded. To VAT cuts. May the house be warm and the bills be bearable. Aoife remarked. To R&D credits. May the suits hire more nerds. Paddy lifted his glass. To duct tape and freedom. Mary smiled. To fuel allowance and school shoes. They drank, they argued. Jimmy said the budget was a joke. Aoife said it was strategic. Paddy said it was urban. Lisa said it was thin. Tom felt it was safe. Mary said, well, sure, it's better than nothing. They laughed, they debated, they agreed on one thing. It wasn't enough. Jimmy leaned back. We're all in the same boat. Lisa added, a leaky one. Paddy replied, with no oars. Aoife said, but we've got each other. Tom raised his glass. And a pint. Mary clinked hers. And a bit of hope. Outside, the city hummed. Inside, the budget had been dissected, digested, and drowned in stout. The gang would go back to their lives, their wages, their bills, their broadband, and their briquettes. But for one night, they were united, not by policy, but by pints. Lisa left them with the sentiment. It's a mixed bag. Tom's passing words. It's a budget for headlines, not households. Eve added, it's good for big business, not much else. Paddy raised his pint. It's a nod, not a handshake. Mary smiled. It's something, but inflation's still eating the rest. Jimmy looked around. We're all in the same boat. So that's a brief overview looking at what everyone can pick up from this. As I said to you, we know about the change in wages, whatnot. In terms of what's in it for small businesses, and I very much left it alone because I wanted to wait till we're just coming up to the end of the show to tell you. In 2 weeks' time, I'm absolutely delighted. I'm going to be joined by Leo, who are going to tell us about a number of incentives they have coming up for the coming year. I'm waiting to see the full Finance Act before we establish whether I'm going to say there is going to be something in it or not, because I'm hearing whispers, but until I see it in paper, I'm not accepting anything as fact. But all I'd say to businesses, keep the resilience going, keep fighting. There is potential there, there is a future there, and hopefully you can stick with us over the next few weeks. In 2 weeks' time, as I said, we're going to have Leo. 2 weeks after that, we're going to have Rockwell Financial talking about pensions and that type of thing. But do keep going. Don't forget to support micro businesses where you can, because at the end of the day, they are the supports that are keeping us going. I have deliberately stayed away from the 9% VAT cut for hospitality debate. I do have some very strong views on that, and I'm afraid that if we get into that conversation that I will offend people or whatnot on my views. But as I said to you, if we all keep going, we all try supporting each other, we definitely have a brighter future coming. So on that, I would bid you all a very good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for today's Lite Bite Lunch. And we'll catch you in 2 weeks' time. Good afternoon.